Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Headline edition will bring you special reports and interviews in a moment.
How you doing? This is the guy from Pittsburgh. As you can see, I'm wearing the Art Bell tribute shirt that I have permission from the artist in England to sell. It's on the Guy from Pittsburgh shop on spreadshirt.com. There are shirts, mugs, tote bags, women's shirts. Unfortunately, for some reason, they only go up to 2XL, but if you're interested, they're fairly cheap. This one I bought from another company. I had it made up so I could wear it, and it's 31 bucks for this thing. My shop, I think, sells it for 12 bucks. So if you're interested, go to spreadshirt.com and type in the Guy from Pittsburgh. Well, tonight I want to talk about Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan, and UFOs. And I spent about a half an hour looking up what I thought would be the top 10 reasons why JFK was really killed. And it's a funny thing. Only one site mentions the animosity between JFK and the steel industry. Fortune magazine warned JFK in 1962 that it had made a powerful enemy in U.S. Steel, Kaiser Steel, and other steel companies when his public comments forced the steel industry to fall back on a $6 a ton price increase. The United Steelworkers had gotten certain benefits and not everything they wanted. So JFK made the steel industry mad. So that's one reason. Then the coal industry would have had to work for 15 to 25 years to make up the inroads made by the nuclear industry. So they were ticked off at Kennedy. That's two. Those things are not mentioned anywhere in the top 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 reasons why JFK was killed. Now, Jesse Ventura has a book, which I haven't gotten yet. I'll order that next month. The 63, and that boggled my mind, 63 reasons why JFK was killed. But I'll run down some others. You had the mafia, because they had gotten Kennedy elected by vote fixing in Chicago, and they felt betrayed by Robert Kennedy going after them when he was Attorney General. You had Cuban emigres who were mad because Kennedy stopped the banned pigs invasion, would not give them air support. Now, it's said that even if he'd given air support, they would have failed. There weren't enough troops there. You had the Russians blamed for this, and yet Kruschev said publicly, Kennedy is a man we can work with. And within a year or so, if I remember correctly, Khrushchev was removed from power in the Soviet Union and another guy came in. The Russians had no reason to kill Kennedy because they thought they had reached understanding with him in the Kennedy administration. Then you had Kennedy creating the United States note. He wanted to eliminate the Fed, another powerful enemy. Let's see, that's the Cuban emigres, steel companies, the coal companies, the mafia, the Federal Reserve Bank, and then you had the KKK and other right-wing groups that were mad about Kennedy's support for civil rights and desegregation. So that's 6. You had the CIA because he had fired the CIA director and that CIA director was appointed as to the Warren Commission right after Kennedy's assassination, so that's 7. You had LBJ, who certainly had interest in becoming president. He knew he was never going to become president, and there was talk that he was going to be dumped from the ticket in 1964, so that's 8. You had Kennedy's efforts. He'd ordered NASA to share UFO information with the Russians 10 days before he was shot. That's 9. You had intimation that the Secret Service may have had done something with it. That's 10. Lee Harvey Oswald, who on one hand was said to be pro-Cuba, and the other hand was said to be anti-Cuba, so that's 11. Jack Ruby and his ties to the mafia, that's 12. And I'm sure I could go on and find another 10 or 12 examples. But this is why I think presidents like Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, who made 5 different speeches about UFOs and whether or not the world will unite to fight a common threat, i.e. an alien invasion. And you have recently on Jimmy Kimmel Live, Bill Clinton talking about how he investigated Roswell and Area 51, and he said in Hong Kong publicly in 2009 that he believed Roswell was all fiction and it never happened. He also has said publicly that whatever happened, they didn't tell him, and he said in Hong Kong they withheld information from him, and that wouldn't be the first time that underlings had lied to a president and withheld information. So I think that Reagan, Carter, and Clinton all realized that if they did disclosure, and Carter had wanted full disclosure on UFOs in his campaign, they knew it would be a death sentence. And Reagan was shot by John Hinckley, but we don't know if John Hinckley was a nut, as every one of these guys is supposedly a nut going back to Lincoln, or if there was any connection to the, oh yeah, I forgot, the military-industrial complex. They were also ticked off at Kennedy. So, spin the wheel of assassination, and whatever it lands on, that's the guys who did it. So that's why I don't think we're ever going to have disclosure by a UF president unless the UFOs land on the White House lawn on the live news. And to liberals I've talked to, like a buddy of mine who hangs out at Starbucks, who believe that everything on Fox is false news, they wouldn't believe it if it was live on the air on all 3 networks, CNN and Fox News. If the aliens landed, got out, and talked to Obama, they would say Fox made it up. Because these people are so obsessed with Fox News, the Koch brothers, or Koch brothers, or however you pronounce their name, I don't know. I don't really care. But they think everything that conservatives, Republicans, the Tea Party is all a vast right-wing conspiracy, much like Hillary Clinton thought it was. And yet she's interested in UFOs, hung out with one of the Rockefellers. So did Bill. So this is why I think we'll never hear the truth about Roswell. And I watched a show tonight, and it made me laugh. It really made me laugh, like how gullible they think we are. The show was Nazis and Aliens. Well, except for the purported crash that happened in the 30s in a wooded area in Germany where the Nazis may have actually recovered a UFO in a body. And there was also a crash in the 20s in Italy. There was no evidence in this entire program that the Nazis had an alien or a UFO. And yet, they brought out a so-called military historian from England, guy you never heard of. They brought a woman who analyzed films of the 50s, and they said every UFO film in the 50s, you substitute the word commie for flying saucer occupants, and they had the nerve to say it was all about the communists. And yet you had Day the Earth Stood Still. That wasn't a communist thing. It's the guy warning we're going to destroy ourselves unless you straighten up your act. And I had not watched that crummy Keanu Reeves or Tom remake because I watched about 5 minutes of it and it's horrible. So there's that story. And then they cart out Nick Pope so they can have their token, quote-unquote, UFO expert. And even he goes and says, well, the Germans had technology, blah, blah, blah. And Foo Fighters that were seen as early as 1941 were all mistaken sightings of the Comet aircraft. Well, nice try, Nick, and nice try. This show should have been called Nazis, Aliens, and the Debunkers. Because the Foo Fighters were also seen by British and American and other pilots in the Pacific. And unless Douglas Dietrich happened to see some Nazi aircraft or Nazi UFOs in the Pacific theater of operations, there weren't any comets. They only built 300 of the things. They only became operational in 44. And the total number of American fighter aircraft they shot down was all of 9 planes. 9. Count them. Yep, that's 5 and 4. Yeah, 9. And one pilot managed to shoot down 3 planes, and our forces figured out a way to kill these things. They either waited till they ran out of fuel. They only had 7 minutes of fuel, or they attacked their landing fields. They had to come in for landing and get new fuel. The first and only rocket-powered aircraft, although you do have jet-assisted takeoff, which could be technically considered rocket power on propeller planes. But this ludicrous thing is saying that all sightings of all Foo Fighters in the European theater were the fault of Nazi aircraft, as if there were thousands of them flying all over Europe, is ridiculous. Then they blamed Roswell on Project Mogul. They said a toy company was building balloons with leftover wrapping paper with little flower symbols on it. And that's why nobody could figure out what the flower symbols meant. Well, the late Jesse Marcel Sr. and Jesse Marcel Jr. saw these things, and they didn't look like flowers. Marcel was familiar with weather balloons and other balloons that were launched on a weekly basis from the Roswell Army Air Force Base. He knew the difference between a weather balloon and a UFO. He was trained to do it. He didn't see no damn weather balloon when he went out to the Brazil Ranch and found the debris field. So this is another bit of debunking. Oh, it's some toy manufacturer. They built a balloon for the Air Force so we could go monitor Russian secret missile programs and figure out if they were going to get the bomb or not. Well, they got the bomb in 1948 or 49. And we had no idea that they were working on the bomb. And yet during this program, they show missiles going down Red Square like it's the new Pontiacs coming out in 1952. And yet they say that, oh, we had no idea what kind of missiles they built. They showed 4 or 5 scenes of these missile carriers just going down Red Square like crazy on May Day. We didn't know what it was. So then they talk about Area 51 being built, and $800,000 developed by Kelly, I can't remember his last name, the guy from Lockheed, and that's they spent to build Area 51, and there are no aliens there, and, Roswell is a weather balloon, and yet that's the only story I ever heard of that has, first there was a weather balloon, then it was another type of craft, then it was a bunch of crash test dummies that were dropped, except for one problem. The project they had with the crash test dummies didn't exist in 1947. You've had 3 different explanations from the Air Force on this. 3. And if you believe that, I got a bridge in Pittsburgh to sell you. This is why anything the Air Force says on Roswell is a crock. But this program was on the newly named American Heroes Channel, formerly the Military Channel, and they should rename it the American Debunkers Channel. Because if this is the kind of program they've put out, they cart out Nick Pope, who should know better, but maybe that's the only thing he was allowed to say. They probably edited the crap out of anything else he said. Oh, it has to be able to German aircraft, and they must all be UFOs, don't you know? So that's the biggest debunking story I've heard in a long time. It's all the fun of Nazi airplanes being mistaken for Foo Fighters. And the Robertson panel had said later on that they thought it was ball lightning. There was never any definitive proof what that was, and yet in 1947, what is seen over Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway? Ghost rockets. I guess they were trying to figure a way to blame that on Nazi rocket aircraft too. And they never did figure out what the ghost rockets were. And then this program also had the nerve to say that the reason people were seeing UFOs, they were seeing U-2s and secret American spy aircraft, and the proliferation of UFO sightings that started from 1947 on was people mistaking these secret military aircraft for UFOs. And the emphasis was that almost every UFO sighting is all either made up, mistaken identity, and there's nothing to it. So if you get a chance, check out this fantasy program, Nazis and Aliens. They had a picture of the Roswell autopsy dummy in there. That was the only alien you see in the whole show. And we know what a fake that was with Santilli and the phony film, the phony autopsy. But there weren't no cowboys in Aliens. And the only thing about aliens in this thing is something else that comes out of the back of a bull. So you know what that is bullcrap in Aliens, not Nazis. And this thing about the Nazis having the bell and they got a secret base in Antarctica, I don't believe that for a minute either. If they had this super technology at the end of the war, they would have used it to win the war. Alright, so that's what I want to say. I don't think that Bill Clinton is ever going to say anything. I think he knows something he doesn't want to tell us. He makes jokes about it. Obama makes jokes about it. Oh, I'm more worried about what's happening on Earth than UFOs. Ha ha ha. And Billy Carter was sincere. Jimmy Carter, sorry. Billy Carter's the beer. Jimmy Carter was sincere about UFOs, but he probably got told to knock it off and to shut up. We know that Bush 1, being the head of the CIA, he released one Freedom of Information document in his term of office. So we weren't going to hear anything about UFOs and him. And we sure as hell weren't going to see any documents about the CIA's involvement in the Kennedy assassination. And yet you got E. Howard Hunt, you got G. Gordon Liddy, you got all those CIA guys crawling all over Dallas that day. And you got Nixon and Bush, neither one can remember they've been in Dallas. Well, I don't know about them, but if I were there when the President of the United States got shot and assassinated, I'd sure as hell remember where I was. So, when you watch these shows, realize there's a hidden agenda. Oh yeah, I forgot one other item. They blame the Illuminati for the death of JFK. I read that in one list. We did not see anything about the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergs, the New World Order, than anything I looked at, but they blamed the Illuminati, an organization that supposedly died out in the 1700s, but they blamed the Illuminati. So, take a jaundiced eye and look at all these reports and all these programs, because there's an agenda there. Some of them try to tell you the truth, or they make suppositions about what they think of the truth, and others start out with the debunking, and they go all the way through and tell you they debunk everything, and you don't hear real facts. All right, this is the guy from Pittsburgh. I will catch you next time, and have a good morning. Bye-bye. Oh yeah, free Art Bell.